and mistrust, that's the beginning. And when you hear about famine, that's the beginning. And of course, when you have poverty, that's the beginning. It's simply because we were not left to be one, to be able to preserve and conserve. And finally, in these statements that I have to give, so that when we begin talking about some of the issues, let me also say that in the global scene, we have deep divides as well. You know, we hear about the northern nations and the southern nations. We hear about development, transitional, and developing states. We even have within nations what we say the haves and have-nots. And my question is very simple. How can we be a global village at all, if that's what it is? What is this global village that we're talking about? I thought a global village had to have some certain commonalities that you aspire to and oneness, but not divisions. Once you have divisions, we are not reaching each other. I would also like to elaborate on a few terms about marine biodiversity. I think marine biodiversity is understood by many to mean many things. But to me, I have to only emphasize one thing which you have not heard. Please, when you talk about marine biodiversity, don't leave the coastal people. They are part and parcel of that marine and coastal. You take them out, the formula is wrong. Marine regions. Some of you have heard about large marine ecosystems. Some of you have heard about ecoregions, with the WWF now promoting about ecoregions. Some of you have heard about seascapes, and some of you have also heard about biogeographic regions. These are just our divisions. But all in all, there must be a binding character or characteristics that can define a region. I think this is normally in terms of the number of animals and the number of plants, the climate, it could be the sea floor, everything that can make you be able to define a oneness. The science of saying whether energy flows are going left or right might be just a question of semantics. But all in all, in order to conserve, you must define a region. Otherwise, your conservation efforts have no definition. Upwelling, taking water from the bottom of the sea and coming to the surface. For some of you that are not very familiar with fertility of oceans, upwelling is like you are tilling land. You are taking subsoil to the surface so that your plants can get that fertility for growth. It's the same in the ocean. You must take seawater that's deep, it comes up, and then it becomes fertile. There are certain similarities. Conservation, that's a hard word. And sustainable development, that's a hard word. But all what it means is something which, if we will ever be able to achieve as human beings, then we would have done a very good service to Mother Earth. What it means is that we must sacrifice something which otherwise we would be able to consume today for the generations which we haven't even seen. It's almost like a religion, and it's a religion by itself. And I don't know how we can do it. By nature, we as humans are very greedy. We do not like to conserve for tomorrow. We would like to make sure that we have had the maximum for ourselves today. But conservation and sustainable development tells us the difference. Are we ever going to be able to reach that? I would like to demonstrate some of the things that I've said with some graphics. I think that's a sea teeming with life. That to me is what marine biodiversity is. I don't know if you are seeing what I'm seeing in that picture. There's a head of an eel. The body is actually inside the soft corals. I'm just asking, what would happen if the corals are not there? Will the eel be the same beautifully placed as it is now? I'm quite sure the picture on the right is very much known to most of you because it is a structure which is very close to here. I'm putting up that picture as disparity of life. In African coastal villages, especially East African coastal villages, houses that most of the residents there live are made out of one tree, and that is the coconut tree. The trunks are used for the walls, the leaves are used for the thatching and everything else. And that is what is life to those people living along the coast. Can you actually compare and talk about sustainable development to those people with the people that are in Rhode Island? Are we talking about the same language or is it a different language? These are fishermen from Tanzania. All what they have is just the children, as you can see there, the nets, and the sea. What is sustainable to them? Now, with that background, now I'd like to then move into some of the very famous statistics that we have always had. These statistics have been provided recently by UNEP, the Regional Seas Program. They have highlighted those 4 issues to be confronting our oceans. The first is increasing coastal population. There's no doubt that there's many of us that are living along the coast now than ever before. There is a lot of marine species which are disappearing. I think the best demonstration of species disappearing, the beginnings of species disappearing, is when we fail to get our famous, delicious fish on the plate. And then you say, where is that species that I was eating always? What has happened? And then you know that something is wrong with the ocean. In fact, the FAO statistical records show that out of the many hundreds of fish stocks that were, in fact, filling our plates, it's now only less than 15 that are harvestable. And so the fisheries is actually plunging. And there are certain types of species also, like the dugong, the turtles, they are also in very, very small numbers worldwide. We cannot talk or avoid to understand the rate of degradation of marine environment by physical alteration of habitats. Look at our harbors. Do we really need to have all those harbors? Look at the beach hotels that we have all over the world. Do we actually need to have all those beach hotels? Look at the way we harvest some of the species by trawling and everything else. Do we actually know the havoc that the fish trawls are doing to the seabed? These are all issues that we have to consider, especially when it comes to the issue of sustainability. I think most importantly, who is actually benefiting from all the degradation that's happening in the marine environment? I would like to just pose a final question on these global issues, and that concerns then the effectiveness of current global ocean governance. You will see that the approach so far used to address these issues, the ones that I've highlighted, has been to negotiate and set up global and regional treaties, action plans, and organizations, in the hope that the national governments will oblige, in the hope that they will oblige. And in that hope, especially in developing countries, it's also in the understanding that the governments will have that much luxury to consider that they have to oblige for ocean things. Let me say that to date, we are not winning. And every sign shows that we are not winning. This approach, which is top-heavy, is not bringing the desired reversal on the negative trends enumerated above. We are now meeting in Montreal to discuss about land-based activities that impact on the ocean. The world governments are converging to discuss why is there no change. And in fact, on Friday and Saturday, we will be discussing about a very important matter, which is looking into means and ways of changing the way we govern environment worldwide. We are just not winning. How about the regional and continental scale initiatives? On this particular case, I would like to just say that instead of talking about the East African coast, which I've made presentations on several occasions, just allow me to be able to talk about Sub-Saharan Africa as a totality to show some of the issues that we have. And basically, what I want to show is whether the citizens will be able to meet their needs and at the same time conserve this very much wanted biological diversity. Of course, within the framework of sustainable development. And again, I just want to remind you of the statements that I said from before. On a whole, we have 32 coastal states. In fact, the whole continent of Africa has 53 states. And out of these, 32 are coastal states. There are 21 states on the western coast of Africa and 9 on the eastern coast of Africa. And as you know, South Africa just sits at the bottom, belonging to both west and east. And so the total there, if my arithmetic is right, should be 32. I counted at one stage, I thought it was 34, and then at a certain stage, I thought it was 32. It was simply because I was counting South Africa twice. The coastline itself is stretching for more than 27,415 kilometers. And of course, the shelf area to the depth of about, the control line of about 200 meters is 1,065,000 square kilometers. And if all African states endorse the exclusive economic zone, then those states in totality will have 10,811 square kilometers of sea area. And then we have to talk about sustaining the use of those oceans in a continent that is so poor that it can't even feed its people. Is that a fair request for the African states? In most cases, when you talk about Africa and when you begin to talk about regional programs on Africa, they're just lumped like one. Goose Africa. Whatever Africa, whatever Africa. In fact, the only unifying character for Africa is that it is a continent. Otherwise, Africa is extremely diverse. And I just wanted to demonstrate the diversity in terms of the weather You know, the east coast of Africa is very much controlled by the monsoons, and the west coast of Africa is not controlled by the monsoons. Just look at the intertropical convergence zone. The movement of the convergence zone is very little between here and there when you talk about the northern winter and northern summer. But look on East Africa. During the northern summer, it sits there, and during the southern summer, then there's quite a big change. And here is where you say Africa is just one. Climate is just one uniform thing. Temperature is just one uniform thing. Maybe I also forgot about another good character about Africa. I think we have the largest deserts as well. Apart from that, Africa is extremely different. Again, I would like to highlight some of the key issues, link them again to the populations, the poverty, and also the governance that we have to put in place in order to achieve sustainability. The population in West Africa for coastal states is about 193 million. And the coastal population in those coastal states is about 48 million. That gives you about 38%. That one has to be compared against the land area. So you have more percentage of people living along the coast than it is the land, because that's also the percentage of land. And in Eastern Africa, it's also the same, about 15 to 10. But what's most important is to recognize that when we are talking about Africa with coastal communities being the poorest in the world, then we are talking about 48 million people in West Africa and 35 million people in East Africa. I wish some of you could actually go and see those types of people that we are talking about. And I wish there was an exchange program between those people and some of you here so that you can also experience the life that those people live. Most of them, if they can afford a one-day meal, then they are very lucky. Otherwise, 2 meals in a day is a big luxury for those people. Coastal resources, yes, we depend on fisheries, coastal forests, agriculture, there's oil and gas, there's non-fuels like sands and limestone, and water resources. Fisheries, I must also say that in fact all the commercial fisheries that's being undertaken in the region, that's sub-Saharan Africa, is not destined for domestic markets. It is coming back to the same people who have more. I cannot believe less of the statement in the Bible that says those that have more will even have more, and those that have less will even have less. In terms of fisheries, that's what it is. Coastal forests, I would say probably 80% of the coastal forest is designed for domestic markets. Agriculture, not much commercial. It's subsistence agriculture, mainly shifting agriculture, just barely trying to cultivate. Bear in mind that coastal soils in Africa, apart from very few pockets, are very poor soils, in which case you can only survive through shifting agriculture. Oil and gas, again, is not for us. The oil and gas is destined for other markets. Non-fuels, probably we benefit more from non-fuels. Water resources, I wish you could visit some of those coastal states. And if you do, can I ask that you make also a contribution? Please use water carefully. Most of the coastal areas in Africa are arid lands. Water doesn't trickle on every tape. And how can you in that respect, talk about sustainability of those areas with the people. The economic indicators. I'll just highlight some figures here which might be useful to us. The net product growth rate varies from -7 in Equatorial Guinea, which is in West Africa, to +8 Morocco. And as you know, Morocco is already in the Arabian side of things. I think they have much more wealth in terms of oil and everything else. The inflation rate, I don't know if here in the US or in Rhode Island you are talking about inflation rates of 35%. Can you have a feeling if that happened here, how you would feel? That is being experienced in Gambia. And how can you tell the Gambians about sustainable development when they are already in the plunges of inflation rates of about 35%? External debt, just look at us. 11 billion in Angola. Apart from war, what can you tell the Angolans about sustainable development? Sources of income, nothing major. Agriculture, oil and gas, petrochemicals, hardware industries. And look, we are even putting up government as a source of income, when the citizens are supposed to contribute towards government so that government can meet its social obligations. In East Africa, it's mainly fishing and subsistence agriculture. In fact, private